All right, welcome to the Lead Generation World Podcast. My name is Michael Faree. Thanks for joining me again today. We got a great show. We've got Jessie Beaudoin from callaction.co joining. He's the CEO and founder. He's a longtime industry veteran. We get to hear some stories about his entrepreneurial career and talk a lot of best practices around texting and follow-up and his company Call Action. So stick around. I think it's a really great conversation. I personally have come across Jessie a couple times and even used Call Action for some of the things I do here at Lead Generation World. So I thought it'd be fun to get him on and talk about that and just talk a little bit of industry shop. So stick around for that. Don't forget, we've got Lead Generation World Denver taking place in January 17th through the 19th. Yes, we're going to have an event in January. We totally respect those that do not feel safe traveling and coming, and respect your opinion. And we've got another group of people that are open to meeting and gathering, and we want to be able to provide an event for them in a non-cavalier way, but in a very safe manner where we can connect with low risk and have an event and have some interaction with each other on a physical way. So for those that do want to attend the conference, it's actually shaping up to be quite nice. We're just actually trailing last year's numbers. We've got a number of sponsors and exhibitors already lined up. If you're interested in exhibiting, we still have booths available, so please let me know. If you're interested in attending, make sure to register in the next couple of weeks because prices do go up. Right now it's $495, which is a excellent deal for a physical conference. In fact, is what a lot of people are charging for virtual conferences today that just don't compare to a physical show. So make sure to register, and let's kick 2021 off on a good foot and connect with people and get back to some sense of normal for those that can. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Jessie in and start talking a little shop. Cool. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Lead Generation World Podcast. I've got Jessie Beaudoin with me here with callaction.co, right?
That is correct.
It's .co. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me. We crossed paths, this last year from a friend, mutual friend, Bill Rice.
Yeah.
How did you know Bill Rice?
Oh, my story of Bill Rice goes way back. So I met Bill because at one point in time he was working for a company called Deep Green, which was doing HELOC loans. And it was one of the real early pioneers of a full online digital mortgage company. And they were doing these home equity lines of credit. And so I had reached out and, it was all through email, and I hadn't met him yet. And I was pretty decent at SEO and some lead gen. So I spun up a website. They had a small little deal that you could do if you shot them over some transactions. And so I started shooting them a bunch of leads. And then eventually I was at a SEO conference, I think, or possibly a mortgage related conference. And I had ran into him and the company had sold, and then we just kind of became friends. So I think that's about 2006, 7, somewhere right around there, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So that's how I've known Bill. So
yeah. So you were doing SEO and SEM back then? Is that for mortgage or?
Yeah. So my original backstory is I was a mortgage lender, my very first job ever. I was a telemarketer for a mortgage company when I was 15 and a half. At 18, got my real estate license because I was pretty decent at it, and started doing mortgages. But because I was young, it was hard for me to get deals back then. So what I did is I started focusing on marketing because I'm like, if people are not going to trust me, maybe I can put out some marketing that's going to make people make inquiries. And then I was already good on the phone, and that's pretty scalable. So I would just do everything on the phone. So that led from, playing around with databases to WinFax. I started doing some WinFax marketing when that came around. And then the story goes that in 1997, I was on a trip with my dad. We were going fishing or something like that. We had a boat, and it was super early, and we were listening to like early morning radio. And this company called Netscape went public with this internet browser and using the www. And it kind of solidified going from, the old, the old addresses of 1.06 point blah, blah, blah. So I had been interested in computers before then, but the internet seemed kind of distant at that point. Like I had the old, was it CompuServe, like access and all of that stuff, but didn't quite click at that moment for me because I was like, these chat rooms, nothing, I don't see it. But when the dub thing and kind of happened, and then all of a sudden that company went from like 0 to worth 100 million in like 2 days, I was like, okay, we got to pay attention here. There's something pretty interesting. So I bought some domains, bought a book on Microsoft front page, taught myself HTML. And then that just kind of grew, tried to, become students of like, Northern Light. That was my favorite SEO, search engine back then. And then this little one called Google that kind of came around, and just got pretty decent at SEO, started attending some of the really early conferences. And I built websites to generate leads for myself as a mortgage lender.
Yeah.
And then that's how I met Bill, because then, I was doing pretty good at that stuff. I could optimize and I could generate leads, but in the mortgage industry, I could only as a loan officer do deals in California because it's the only place I was licensed. So from a scaling point of view, for the first couple of years, I just threw most of everything else away. And then eventually in like 1999, 2000, when Doug Lebda founded LendingTree, I kind of hooked into that. Then the whole affiliate space for mortgage business kind of came around. So I started segmenting out my lead flow and giving some out to those guys. And so my relationship with Bill kind of started off because the HELOC, it allowed me to SEO a website and collect payment, kind of nationally.
Wow.
So that's kind of my story. And then, I just kind of keyed in on that SEO, SEM, and
what a great story. I mean, especially really at the birth of sort of lead gen, right there, which is really cool. But you were even an entrepreneur before that. What's the story with the lemonade stand? And
my dad used to buy and sell cars, and he's always been an entrepreneur, right? He's always been self-employed. He came here from Canada, he had like $25 in his pocket or something like that, and just kind of made his way up from 21 and has done pretty good for himself. So we used to go to a really large automotive swap meet called the Pomona Antique Car Swap Meet.
Yeah, heck yeah. I grew up going to that thing. I'd bring my car there all the time.
Yeah.
I bought a couple there, parts. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's still huge, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I actually just went before this whole COVID thing. It'd been years since I went. I went back. It was kind of reminiscent or nostalgic to kind of go check it out. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. So what happened is my dad would take all of his junk to go sell and cars and flip stuff and do all of that. So I was maybe, 8, 10 years old, 12 years old or something. So we started off because it would be in the summer. It's on the blacktop. It's on the fairgrounds, really freaking hot.
Yeah.
So I started off with a little lemonade stand and selling some lemonade. And then eventually what happened is, took a lemonade bucket, made like $60 one day. It was like, man, that's a lot of money for an 11-year-old or whatever. So then did that. This swap meet would happen every 3 months. So then the next month, 3 months later happens, go back, make 2 jars of lemonade, because the first time I sold out of all the lemonade. So this time I bought 2. And then, 3 months after that, or like, well, hey, let's, people start asking like, do you have Coke or anything? So like, then they would start buying 6 packs of Coke and selling the Coke for 50 cents a piece, right? Yeah. And so we would position ourselves kind of strategic, because the swap meet would only have like drinks at the end of like every 4th row. And you would kind of have to walk like, I don't know, 1/8 of a mile or 1/4 mile, and people would get pretty parched in between. So eventually that kind of grew and grew. So pretty soon, like we're buying like 30 or 40 cases worth of soda. And I'm literally making like $1,000 a day. Like, right? So I got trash cans, I got things full of ice, and we're just killing it. So doing pretty well with that. And then we're like, well, let's level up, right?
Yeah.
So the next thing I get into, because my dad, always wanted to push kind of the limits of entrepreneurship, we started selling peanuts. And we would sell a handful of peanuts for $1 and you would get a free beer. So, you can't sell beer. So awesome. All of a sudden started doing that. And next thing you know, making a lot more money on a weekend. And I would outsell my dad from selling all of his stuff. And I was like 13 or 14 years old. And then one day, I had a sign, buy a handful of peanuts, get a free beer. And I had, the full setup. So one day some guys bought some beers and then they turn around and, classic like leather jacket, mustache, glasses, and it was ATF. So, so alcohol, tobacco, and firearms arrested me at 14 for no license to sell alcohol. So they handcuffed me, put me on my knees, picture next to the thing, like to get all their proof and stuff like that. My dad's like, listen, 15-year-old dude, like, just give me the ticket. I'm the dad. I'm the one that did all that stuff. And they're like, nope, he's the one that handed us the booze. Like, that's his thing. So anyway, 6 months later, go to court, judge looks at me like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, we were selling peanuts and giving away free beers. And, it was a lemonade stand that just entrepreneur working to save money for college.
Yeah.
So, ask about my grades and if I was delinquent and, all those kind of things. And fortunately, I was pretty good in school and had good attendance and everything else. So then I got assigned like probation, I think for like 6 years or something. For ATF.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So that was my early entrepreneurship story.
Holy cow. That's 6 years probation. That seems like a pretty, that seems like a lot for a young kid,
I mean,
that seems a little excessive.
Yeah, I think it was from like 15 to 21 because like anything related to alcohol, right? So because I was underage and no license and stuff like that. So anyway.
So did you downsize or did you just scrap the whole thing and never go back?
Yeah, at that point we scrapped it. And, But by then what happened is we were so big, there was a ton of competitors. So then there was guys selling like nails and screws and all of that stuff, but nobody ever took it to the scale. And even to today, like if you go to Pomona Swap Meet, there's guys with coolers and they're still like, hawking off their 1 12-pack or whatever, or their, a case of beer, and they're just trying to pay for their space, right?
Yeah. That is classic. So you've been an entrepreneur always. Have you ever, outside of the mortgage, I suppose was that your only time sort of being employed, quote unquote?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, it's if I'm employed, you're a commissioned employee, so you're always on your own. So my last paying job was when I was 18. And then after that, I've always been self-employed. But yeah, I've always been either a salesperson on the mortgage side of things and always mortgage, real estate, and kind of internet driven, because what I found out, I was young and I like to have fun.
Yeah.
So one thing that I learned really early on, this is kind of another story that parlays back to my dad being self-employed, was when we were young, every 3 years or so, we're originally from Quebec, Canada. So he would save up all of his money, close his garage because he worked from home and, customized cars and did all that stuff. So then we would get in a van and drive cross country and go visit all of our family. And the one thing that always stuck in my mind back then was when he closed the garage, like business was over, right? Like there was no money coming in. So when so early on when like WinFax came out, I was doing some really creative marketing with WinFax on the mortgage side of things. My real estate appraiser would give me all of his old data disks. So I would analyze basically like all of the property records, and I would find customers that I knew for a fact, like I could help through refinance. So I did, direct mail at a really large scale, sending out hundreds of thousands of pieces. I did the WinFax stuff. So I just kind of followed technology until eventually, I ended up on websites. And then on the websites, I got pretty lucky. Like it just kind of clicked in my mind what was happening. And so I was buying some exact match domains and did pretty good on that SEO kind of side. But I've always been in that business because what I learned early on from my dad was technology is leverage, right?
Yeah.
And even if I don't feel like going out and selling someone that day, if they're calling me, then usually that's pretty easy, pretty good.
Yeah.
And most businesses fail because they don't have enough inbound business, which is the whole lead generation business as a whole, right? It is the industry. Sales and marketing is, if I don't have customers, I got to either go out and find them, or I got to get them to call me. So either or. So,
well, so looking back, I mean, what's your, advice to an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur? I mean, is there something that you sort of clung to in what you do? I mean, and that you would share?
Yeah. I mean, I have a motto that, I call it be constantly curious. Because what curiosity does is it encourages lifelong learning. Right. And so when you see a little something that kind of sparks your interest, like you just don't know if something is going to get big or if it's not. But if you're curious, you're at least always hyper aware of your environment all of the time. And that's how basically opportunities start to kind of surface, because a lot of opportunities just being at the right place at the right time. And you have to be aware of like maybe things that seem disparate that all of a sudden are kind of coming together like just a perfect storm of timing. And then if you're there, then you're going to do fairly well. So, if there's anything, I think it's just being constantly curious, which is going to be it's going to create a natural inclination to always be learning and always trying to better yourself and always kind of be looking around the corner. Because, if you achieve a certain level of success, I think it's really easy to fall into complacency and thinking like, oh, this is the way it is. And like, we're doing well and we're going to keep doing well. And that's how, the term disruptors kind of comes around is, somebody else is looking around the corner, a little bit further than you are. So I think it's probably that. And then I also think it's take big swings, but personally be conservative, meaning in your own finances and things like that, right? Because, to take a big swing, you want to take big chances because that's how you'll get big wins. That sometimes when you get big wins, it's really easy to think like, oh, this is going to last forever. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, oh crap, what happened? I just lost everything.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my question is like, obviously ups and downs, you don't know when ATF is going to come around, how far you're going to push it.
Right.
But put you out of business. But with all those ups and downs, I mean, I think a lot of people will fall back on, hey, maybe I just get a job, and this too stressful or whatever.
Right.
So I just didn't. It's curious, how you. It sounds to me that you said a couple things about you like to have fun and you like to have some sort of freedom to some extent, and that's almost driven you to be that keep moving forward and do things as well. I don't know, is that right?
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. I think for me, it's been, I want to control my own destiny. Yeah. I've always been someone that, if I had a job, it's just somebody else's destiny. Yeah, the pay may seem guaranteed, but that business is not guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed, right? It's something like 80% of the companies that were on the Dow, the top 500 companies in the country, every 40 years, they're not there anymore. Right? They disappear, come and go. So if you think of there's security in a job, I think the only security that you have is in yourself, right? And it's if you have this mentality that a job provides security, I think, that could work for some people. Just doesn't work for me. You want those kind of people, and ideally that's going to be super critical. But I think your audience, it's in the lead gen space. It's probably not who they are. They know that, like, listen, there's only one person that's going to feed me, and that's me.
Yeah.
So, and when you get a good job, like, the important thing is, if you do get a good job, your next job is to get a better job.
Right. Yeah. You're moving on to you're positioning yourself for something else. Yeah. It's interesting.
To constantly be moving up. So it's the same kind of thing. It just depends if you need to take that big swing or not. And it's just not possible for some people if you already have family, and when, depending your age, that you enter into entrepreneurship. But like for me, everyone in my family is self-employed. Nobody has had a job, so I don't know any different, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, it becomes the norm. Okay,
Yeah.
so you go from mortgage, lead gen, SEO, and then call action. Let's talk a little bit about call action.
Sure.
Call action is a platform that helps communicate via text, ringless voicemail, email. Maybe you can describe it a little bit better, but I'm curious to know. So maybe just explain what call action is first.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think we're kind of a sales enablement software or sales and marketing automation.
Yep.
What I'm really trying to do is take what is the task on your task list from your CRM, which is typically going to be a lot of outbound. That's a lot of follow-up. It's, call this person, text this person, reach this person. And when I started looking at the data, what I realized is that, for every new lead you generate, you probably got to do 8 to 10 follow-up attempts to get a hold of that person. So what happens is there's a very massive problem there, because that is not scalable, right? I generate 100 leads, takes 8 attempts, that's 800 follow-up attempts.
Yeah.
Generate 1,000, that's 8,000. And that's just to get to the first conversation to qualify someone. So call action really came out of this need to be able to scale, because when I was doing my own lead gen, I still worked those transactions myself. I took the California business and I did those deals, and I did about 3,500 mortgage transactions. So I did a fair amount of volume for being just a small loan officer with an assistant that was helping me. And I was able to take my entire business while everybody else was going out and kind of chasing after deals, knocking on real estate agent doors and stuff like that. I was getting everything kind of inbound to me. But I still had a lot of follow-up that I needed to do because of all the little leads that I would generate. So call action came out of like really looking at this problem and going, how can I use technology to leverage my time as a salesperson, right? Because if I'm chasing, or if I'm doing outbound, yeah, it is a required task, but it's not the highest dollar productive activity that I can do. The highest dollar productive activity that I could do as a salesperson is be in conversation with customers, right?
Yep.
So our goal was create some automation, take leads from calls, text messages, and email leads from every primary communication channel of which people are going to respond to in marketing, right? So all marketing kind of funnels into 3 primary channels. Call action takes those 3 channels and does the outbound outreach to follow up with someone in a way that feels authentic, coming from the salesperson. And when they respond, we direct connect them straight to that salesperson for a seamless handoff. And with all of that information being logged into their CRM of choice, because we know that about 30% of people's time is actually spent doing data entry into CRMs and just managing systems. So we have nearly 45 native API integrations with different CRM systems and stuff like that. So we're trying to eliminate data entry, note-taking, anything that is a repetitive task we're trying to automate, including the follow-up of leads primarily. So that's really what we do, born from my own pain.
Yeah, and that's where the best stuff comes from, right? Is really trying to find a solution to something that you're very intimate with, and figuring that out. I use call action, and I came across you obviously from Bill, but it was because I was looking for a solution, and I I went across a number of them. And I'm not a client that sort of fits into your model, right? You guys, I mean, I think anybody frankly can, but I think you guys tend to cater to real estate and mortgage folks. But I'll be the first one to say that this platform could be used by anybody, even a conference person, event person, but what I loved about it, and this isn't a paid ad by any means. This is like I'm giving real feedback here.
Right.
I love it because I was looking for a solution that can manage a real personal communication of text back and forth with some follow up and do different things. And people that watch this podcast know that I use a phone number to give out a code for a discount at the conference, and there's responses that are involved in it, and it's very much me, but it's very much automated, right? So it's not a big clunky thing. I can even jump into the text message whenever, if I see something that's more specific to me, I can hop right in there, and it's so easy to use. But not only that, I've got a ringless voicemail set up to it. I've got a message here and there, and I can create this process of this communication line with the person is me. It looks, or it's organic, and it feels me, and it is. I mean, I don't know. Otherwise, saying it's automated, but I feel like that sort of takes away from really the feel of it because it doesn't feel automated. Yeah, that's what I love about it.
Because what we're doing is we think of like sales as a whole.
Yeah.
The process of sales is very automated. That's why we say that there's sales scripts and a lot of those kind of things, right? It is repetitive in nature.
Yeah.
And automation works very powerfully for anything that you do repetitive. So if you get a new inquiry to whatever your business is, you probably have a pretty standardized way of doing outreach to get to that two-way conversation. And it's only until it becomes two-way does, skill, knowledge, trust, rapport building, and all that stuff really kick in. But everything else before that can be set up if you understand or can be automated if you understand where the lead came from initially, so that the outreach that is going out is very much in sync with what the inquiry was. And that's where humans, right, do well. So if someone filled in an inquiry from somewhere, like, oh, that person came from X, so I'm going to follow up in the appropriate manner. We just do that by giving you multiple call tracking numbers, because that's one of the primary ways that the highest intent customer is actually going to be contacting you.
Yeah.
Right? It's through a phone call. So when we do that, we're able to do that outreach, all goes straight back to your cell phone. You were mentioning that, we're kind of real estate and mortgage specific, and we are initially, and it was a very, 5 or 6 years ago, we were kind of cutting edge technology. It was fairly new. Like all of the stuff that we were doing was not really around. So what I needed to do was educate and create a market, right?
Yeah.
And in a market is you have to have use cases and things like that. So what we did is the same thing that I really focused on before on the mortgage side of things when I was building websites, was this concept of like kind of niches to riches. So what I did is I focused on the real estate space because 2007, like real estate came to lead gen like 6 or 7 years behind basically the mortgage side. Mortgage was way ahead of the curve because the data on the real estate side was so hidden. So when Trulia came out, which was kind of the first SEO optimized, like Pete Flint, I remember, meeting him, and we did a side-by-side conference one time, and I was talking about, I got hired by company called Help You Sell because I was pretty good at SEO. So I was talking about using blogs to generate leads from a real estate point of view using SEO. And the guy that comes behind me was Pete Flint and his partner back then, Sammy Anikian. And they basically say like, oh, this stuff is like black magic. Just give us your data and we will basically do the SEO and give you back the leads. And Trulia was really the first company that did that. And they took off like crazy, right? And then behind that came Zillow, who did it in a slightly more creative fashion with the home values, but and they really took off. But But what that did is it gave me a lot of early data to give use cases on like, hey, you guys suck at follow-up. It's not me telling you this.
Yeah.
Here's the National Association of Realtors that tells you you guys suck. So we focused on that real estate space because it's a really high value transaction. The lead was pretty expensive. And I already had experience from like what, guys like Quicken Loan and stuff. Speed to lead was already a thing on the mortgage side. So we knew that was going to kind of permeate down into the real estate lead gen as well.
Yeah.
And so I just picked that niche initially. And so it was a fairly large
but it's
market.
pretty, you guys could be pretty agnostic though. I mean,
oh yeah.
I think your point, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
we have insurance attorneys. I have beauty supply companies. I have educational. I have one guy that does he sells courses on how to open your own beauty school, your own hairdressers and all kinds of different.
Yeah. Well, it's cool. When I first came across, I was obviously, thinking of it for myself. But I was like, man, I said this too. I think these insurance guys should be using this too, because there should be more, I think, if I understand their whole process, there should be more follow-up and more one-to-one personal communications with their clients, checking in with them, via text or a phone call, whatever. And or following up on policies and just different things that they can do and automate those real personal communications through your system. Because I think one of the problems with text when people want to do texting, it's like it's either massive or it's one-to-one. You know what I'm saying? It's like either you get a platform that goes, well, unless you're doing thousands of texts a month or a week or a day, then we really can't do it. Or
they're using short code or something like that. Or
short code. Yeah. And it's just not, it doesn't become applicable for a smaller business like a real estate agent or an insurance agent or somebody that can really manage and it's not to say that this can't be used by a massive corporation either, obviously.
No.
But it's nice that you kind of have some flexibility in the campaign sizes of what you can really get out of using call action, which is really, really, really cool. I mean, I could even have an image sent or a PDF in there. I could do, which is exactly what I can do from my phone,
Right.
And so that's what, and I think those are limitations that other companies likely have. I don't know, but the ones that I came across, it just didn't fit what I wanted, which was somebody to text me, and for me to be able to capture that information so that I can text them back and have a conversation. Because listen, we all know mobile is and texting is something that is unavoidable when it comes to a contact. You can avoid calls.
Right.
You probably won't even open the email.
Right.
But a text, you're going to see it. And if it's done right and it's coming from Mike versus something else, then you're going to, it's a really I think it's probably the best form of communication today,
At the end of the day, right, we don't say, hey, I lost my computer. We say, I lost my phone. And the most used technology on this is the phone call and the text messaging.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it so pervasive. It's so accessible to everyone, everywhere. Everybody knows how to send a text and receive a text, and doesn't matter which device or any of that stuff. It's just basically about creating conversations. And we, have been hyper focused on this for a super long time. And one of our tools, I think you mentioned it, the text for info.
Yeah.
We're taking the concept of the landing page, and we know there's lots of studies that show out there that, if your form is, 5 fields versus 3 fields versus 1 field, there's going to be significant differences in conversion on each one of those. And what we focus or what we think about is if 65% of traffic right now is mobile, and if you look at Instagram and Facebook traffic, it's 98% of all traffic is actually mobile, then the thing is that you want to make it as easy as possible to access information from the mobile device. And filling out forms on your phone is no fun, right? This is why Google is pushing for using the login, the same thing that Facebook is using with their Facebook lead ads, and LinkedIn has done, and all these different companies have done. The consumers are starting to get pretty savvy with that as well. I think the most savvy marketers on the planet are probably political marketers, right? There's $10 billion being spent in this run on political advertising. And pay attention, what are they asking you to do? What's the call to action that the political advertising campaigns are trying to get you to do? It's all text, right? Text the name of the candidate, text, left, text right, text up, text down, text something. And the reason why is that it feels so easy for the customer because they don't feel like they're giving up anything, right?
Yeah.
If they're just basically the exchange of information of the landing page of like, am I going to give up 5 fields to get something of value? Like that exchange itself is being weighted when someone lands on a landing page. And you're going, I got to give to get. Is what I'm going to get going to be as much value of what I'm giving up? When you do it via text, it feels very fluid. Like I'm not giving up a whole lot because all I did is I just basically texted a little code. Yeah. But the reason why the political campaigns love this is that they know that they're able to take those phone numbers, and that phone number, you can have multiple email addresses, but you only have one mobile phone number, at least most people do. And from that phone number, you could build custom audiences and lookalike audiences, and you can really start to segment and get really hyper-personalized. And you've already opened the door to two-way communication, right? And that's the holy grail. The whole reason for a landing page is to get the phone number so you could start a conversation with someone.
Absolutely. I know that's what's so interesting. It's that if there's any item, right, in that lead form, the cell phone is arguably
the hardest one to get
and the most important thing, right? Yeah. Like you just elaborated on. I mean, you can build the audiences, you can do, and now you have this communication, and you can get a hold of them generally, and now they've also opted in and they're communicating back and forth with you. So they've created some precedents with communications unless they ask to stop. But yeah, that is really, really cool. And I want you to expand a little bit because I saw something you posted in regards to Facebook ads and the integration, I think, with a cell phone. And tell me, is that ringing a bell or something?
The new ad unit.
Yeah.
So Google has always had this kind of click to call ad.
Yeah.
And it never gained all that much traction, it seems like, although they really push for you to put a phone number in there. We know that, those of you that are real professional PPC people, I mean, I don't do PPC personally, so, but I don't see it have the same legs as basically as traditional PPC where you're driving traffic to a landing page. But the lead quality is arguably higher, especially in anything that's related to kind of emergency services. So, someone is not going to fill out a form if they're having a flood in their house. They're going to click to call button, right?
Right.
But what Facebook has been a little bit behind on this, and what they're giving you the ability to do now is one of their call to action buttons, or what they call a CTA button. Before it was learn more, download, so on and so forth. And it would redirect traffic off the site and take you to your landing pages, or it would be the Facebook lead ad. Now they're rolling out a call now button. And used to be available if in some really limited circumstances, if you had a business, you could have a call now button so that they could call you through the business profile. But now they rolled it out onto the reach ad initially, and you could have a button that the call to action was to call. And so what you're doing is you're generating calls that are coming directly into your business. And by default, they tell you to put whatever phone number that you want. And most businesses are just going to put their generic phone number or their front line or whatever it might be. With our platform, because we are a call tracking platform at the same time, the combination of all this, we can put a dedicated phone number in those Facebook call only ads. And when that person calls, what ends up taking place is we're going to capture that information, drop it into your CRM. We're going to do a reverse data append, validate the phone numbers, try and find email addresses, social profiles, and stuff like that. And we're going to do the data entry into the CRM to log the lead. We can also record the phone call, transcribe the phone call into text so that it now becomes searchable. But it makes it very powerful for certain types of advertisers because the call now button is ubiquitous across the entire internet. When we first came out about 5 or 6 years ago, we went to a company called BIA Kelsey. And I don't know if you guys know this particular company, but they really focus on local advertising, small, medium business, BIA Kelsey. And we won the startup of the year through them because they looked at us like, wow, you can run these call action numbers in your yellow pages and on your direct mail. And for small business, this was very, very powerful. And we had some conversations with GoDaddy. GoDaddy created their new product called Second Line, which is a little bit, I think, off of some of the principles of what we talked about back then. But with this new Facebook kind of ad component, because consumers are so used to just pushing the button to call now, BIA Kelsey has done some research. They anticipate that it's like 180 or 190 billion click-to-calls are happening per year in 2020.
Wow.
Right? Every Google search that you have is a click-to-call. On your cell phone, it's click-to-call. Every email that you send or the phone number is converted to a link, it's click-to-call. So people don't know phone numbers anymore, right? It's the action of just kind of clicking and doing something. And that's why we don't know our own family's phone numbers most of the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's nice with what Facebook is doing, the majority of the traffic on Facebook already is on a mobile device.
Yeah.
So if you have products or services that are conducive to basically live phone call transfers, you can run basically our phone numbers in this ad, and they just rolled it out to traffic campaigns. So this is the most newest thing, and I think it's only been about 3 weeks or so. So you can run a traffic ad, and the call to action is a call now button, and that will generate live inbound phone calls into your business. And my guess is that there's probably going to eventually be a text now button as well, because Google has also experimented with this as well. But for Facebook, this makes a lot of sense, and I think it's going to people that are running campaigns with this, I think are going to get a much cheaper cost per click and impression and everything else, simply because the model for Facebook to monetize Facebook is to keep you on Facebook. So if you're basically paying for traffic ads that are trying to take people off, that is counterintuitive because time on site and session time is more important for Facebook because they need to show multiple ads. So if they can get people to start doing click to calls, I think the algo will kind of favor these ads. And then we just give you a way to basically capture that, scale that, interact with those particular customers through some of our automation, because if they call the number and nobody answers, we're able to interact via text through some of our call automations that take place. And we can even do things like if you have a sales department, that click to call button could actually ring everybody in your sales department simultaneously and create like a first to claim kind of race. Mm-hmm. And again, we can track whoever made those calls. But in my mind, this is really important because, and I think Facebook kind of lagged a little bit on this purposely, because they know that customers are so used to just clicking the call everywhere, right? On anything. So now, as we started seeing data that advertisers are running lead ads, the customer, because Facebook kind of shows like you're about to share this information, at first the lead quality was super high because the people would just hit go, go, go and continue. But once they started getting calls back and they're like, how did you get my information? And you as an advertiser be like, well, you gave it to us when you clicked that button and you said you were going to share it with us. We're seeing customers starting to change that information, right? So what happens is you can't mask, you can't fake the click to call button. You're going to get 100% of the accurate data 100% of the time. Right? And that's the value. And this is like for us, this kind of looking around the corner. When we looked, iPhones, and I watched kind of what happened with the SEO going into apps and Google localizing search results, and why SEO, like why I struggled a little bit with SEO back then, was this whole thing that was kind of happening with this mobile device. I knew this is not going anywhere. And if anything, and I think with COVID and all of this stuff, what it's taught us is that human communication is more important than ever. That sense of connection is more important. And now hearing that voice at the other end, if you are a business that provides services, that consultation, that reinforcement that the customer is doing the right decision by selecting you, people want to hear that. And I think that connection is becoming much more important. So, calls have always been here. It's the oldest technology around, and it's not going to go anywhere. Yeah. And if anything, I think it's just going to continue in importance as people seek more and more true professionals, right? If you have a landing page with no phone number, closing rate, completion rate goes down, because we're like, is this a real business? Like, the amount of disinformation, people's trust level has been going down and down and down.
Yeah.
And there's something that's soothing about a phone call and being able to have someone at the other end that you feel is real.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too is because when you're talking about, I'm thinking, when are they going to implement a text option just immediately, right? But they kind of do that, right, with the messaging though. But it's not via mobile. It's either through the Facebook messaging,
Facebook Messenger. Yep.
Yeah, and I think Google is also in some searches now allowing business listings to be able to take in a message. Yep. As well. Have you seen that?
Yep. They have a new chat function of some sort. So
which is obviously all within that desktop application messaging platform. It's not mobile, which
Correct.
Isn't quite, obviously not as valuable, because to us as the brand that wants to get that mobile device phone number and then subsequently use it for all sorts of things. But you can see that evolution of messaging sort of being implemented too versus a call, because we know, even hesitating on, hitting call now sometimes is more and more people are more hesitant to pick up the phone and call. If I could just text, it's, maybe a little less intrusive, or I don't even know how you.
Yeah, I think it depends on where they're at. On the funnel, right? So I have a concept that I call the art funnel.
Yeah.
So I think any sales funnel is really broken down into art. And the top of the funnel is aspirational. The middle of the funnel is research. The bottom of the funnel is transactional. And this is why marketing itself is a combination of science and art. It is getting that right kind of combination. So the higher you are in the top of the funnel, the less you're still aspirational. You're probably like, okay, sending some information, doing your own research. And what's hard, right, is that from an SEO or a lead gen perspective, we are taught that like, you got to put out content. Well, what happened is there's so much good content that it's getting harder to figure out a way to get people to make an inquiry, right? Because they're self-educating through almost entirely through aspirational and even research. Like if you take mortgage really early on, I saw that mortgage calculators were really important. So I created, like 70 or 80 different kind of mortgage calculators, and I ranked really high for that stuff. And that mortgage calculator solve that research phase of someone's intent journey, right?
Yeah.
Because at the top, they have low intent. They're not really sure if they have the ability. They might have a little bit of motivation. When they get into the middle of that funnel, either motivation goes up or basically ability. And that's why they're researching, is they're trying to figure out, should I be more excited about doing something, or can I do something, right? That's the validation. That's that research phase. By the time they get to the bottom of the funnel, nowadays, what happens is the amount of calls, like it's more instantaneous, right? We're used to the button click of getting instant feedback loop and knowing something is happening. And this is actually creating more calls, not less calls. Because if I sent a form, oftentimes, like I still wouldn't be able to actually talk to someone for some time. And so if the experience is, well, I'm not going to fill out that form because I don't know, I have no guarantee. Or if you take like the Uber example, I don't have that visual feedback of like, is someone on their way to help me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So if I submitted my form, I don't know, I might get an email that says like, oh, we got your request, we'll be contacting you soon, but what's soon, right? So I think that as the content has gotten better, people self-educate through aspirational and research, and the first point of contact is really becoming transactional at this very, very bottom of the funnel. If I use like a car buying experience, it might be like, I start off aspirational that, hey, I'm thinking about buying a new car, right? Then you're doing research of like,
the different cars and everything.
Yeah, different cars and everything. Then you start to narrow down in the research phase by, JD Edwards and gas mileage and price of those cars. And then maybe you end up on some sites that are showing you the actual sticker prices of those cars.
Yep.
And then now you know your model, you know what you want to pay for it because you have an idea what is a good deal. And so what you do is you start doing searches on dealership sites. And sometimes it's going to be like, here's an ad for a car. I'm going to call and validate, do you have this car in stock or is this a bait and switch? Right? Because you've got the 2021 Ford Bronco, 10 edition, blah, 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 whatever. I want to come in and I want to pay a sticker for it. Right? And that is going to be a phone call. And that'll be like, I'm going to come in right now, because still 65, 70% of all cars are still sold on a lot.
Yeah.
People want that validation.
What's really cool, and you mentioned it too, is that you guys are integrated with a bunch of things. And I just, it's so cool because I think of all these different ideas to use, the call action platform. But one of them, a simple way, is obviously email collection for our newsletter. So instead of filling out a form, they can just text, the email and then it automatically goes in a MailChimp and good to go. But you have tons of other, really, other important integrations that people. What's sort of the most popular one is it just HubSpot or something like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, we have HubSpot, we have ActiveCampaign, we have a lot of those kind of companies.
Yeah.
On the email side, we're letting you send the email, so we have SparkPost, Mailgun, SendGrid, all of those different kinds of companies. Where I think, we're seeing, there's two places where we see a lot of traction. The first basically is on the calls and the broadcasting of calls. I think sales organizations are starting to understand the importance of the phone call and actually tracking calls, because they realize that if I do all of this marketing all over the place, I can track, my CPC, my cost per impression. I can track all of those things. A lot of businesses, they display one phone number and they have no clue when that call comes in, where it came from, so that they understand the intent. So that portion of it is becoming really important, and people are starting to really value that. The other side of it from an integration point of view is basically that text for info as a landing page to collect information and pushing that data out to whatever you want. Some really creative stuff. We have a two-way Zapier integration as well. So we can take updates that are happening in CRMs based on tagging and push that as to initiate basically an outbound kind of call campaign. So let's say use your insurance example.
Yep.
You could do something where, if a tag fires off because of an anniversary date, or maybe you have some third-party process that's running in the background and you realize that if you're a mortgage lender, there was a credit pool, a soft credit pool on someone's credit report, that can filter off a tag, which then comes to us, which can then automate an outbound outreach back to that customer that you already have a relationship with, to prevent portfolio churn, because you know that they're shopping for something.
And it could be a ringless voicemail or a text or any, right?
Yeah, the ringless voicemail, all of this stuff requires that, you have a pre-existing relationship with
right. Yes.
So, to be 100% TCPA compliant. But yeah, what happens ever since iOS 13 came out and has that option to do filter unknown callers, those of you that have like outbound call centers, you probably saw your call connection rates go from maybe like low 20s, high teens down into some places like into tens, right? So 10 outbound phone calls, I'm lucky if I connect one time. And the reality is, because those calls with like that iOS 13, that filtering unknown callers, if you're not in the contact list, you're going automatically to voicemail anyway. So all that we looked at was those trends. And so we do a combination of like a ringless voicemail and then stacking that with a text message that kind of follows up and says like, hey, I called earlier. They see a missed call from the same phone number. They hear your voice. There's a reference to a date and time. The text message says, hey, I hope you're having a great Tuesday. I called you about an hour ago. Please call or text me back when you have a chance. Like, that feels very authentic. And that's what you would be doing if you followed your action plan in your CRM.
Well,
and that's what we're trying to replicate.
Yeah, and you can add a V card so that it goes into their contacts, and now you're in there.
Yeah, so the V card functionality that we have is basically it sends a V card that someone can download, and what's different is we give our users the ability to add like multiple phone numbers in there.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is they might be using our automation, but they may call from their personal cell phone at some point in time. So if we can get the customer to download that V card, and in that V card, the other phone number was listed, then you're going to pass through and you're going to escape the, filter unknown callers, and you'll appear basically in the caller ID as being that same company. If you're in the text message, you'll appear a lot of times as maybe such and such person.
Right.
Because the phone is getting much more creative basically at doing some stuff there. Maybe we do some neat things where we SEO optimize the V card, because if you think of your phone, if you're using voice search in Siri and you say, give me the number one lead generation person, and my V card had that in the notes, well, there's a chance that, you might pop up in those search results on that phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's really cool. I wish we could, do you have like a number we can even play with? Like if somebody wants to see like experience like this right now, they can just shoot you a text or something. And
yeah. Let me see if I didn't even think to get prepared for something like that. But if you give me 1 second,
pull up a number.
Find like a research paper that I have, maybe that I have some some codes tied to it. So give me
pull something up, and then and I'll put it up here too.
No problem.
Just so if people want to just see what the heck the sort of it kind of feels like, they could shoot you a text, and then get something, and then. I don't know. I think, there's no secret that text messaging and mobile devices is going to be, if not already, the number one form of communication. And just was really excited to see, how I could use it from an event perspective. And really, because one of the things that I really strive to do anyways is have sort of a personal touch and connection, because I'm part of this industry. A lot of friends, and I like the community aspect of it. And I think, us being lead gen folks that started an event, we're not like an event company per se. We've never done this before. It's more about, being a community advocate, and having that communication with people, and people, texting me or I'm texting them back and forth, I think is valuable. I think it makes it more personal. And I see that should work across all kinds of different industries and companies, so it's really cool to check this out. Did you find one?
Yeah, so you can text the word. So this is a friend of mine created a company called Climate Score. So it's if you were going to buy real estate, you could put in your property address and it gives you a climate score for your property. Okay. So we'll just use that because it's still kind of curious for most people. You can see what the report is, and this is a brand new kind of startup. So and kind of help my friend out, he'll see some traffic. But if you text the word
first of all, that's really nice of you. I was expecting you to grab one of your own, so people go into. But look at you.
I'll help him out here.
I love this. Okay, so I'm going to write down the number too. So we're going to text SCORE.
The word SCORE,
Yeah.
SCORE.
Yeah.
So, and the phone number is 657 444 1500. So
Okay.
657-444-1500.
Okay.
And just text the word SCORE. You'll get back an instant, thank you with basically his website. There's a link on there. Click on that link and you can see his website and kind of poke around and figure out, what your heating costs were if you're going to buy a house or if you're in a flood zone or a fire zone or anything like that. So it just felt kind of appropriate considering I'm in California. We've been on fire here. So
Yeah. On that note, just real quick, do you have, are we running up on time or do you need to hop off?
No, I'm good for another 10 and 15 minutes or so.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay, so I'm actually going to do it right now. So I just texted SCORE to this, and I got this message here, which I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, get a report, free home, and then his website's in there. Yep. Yeah.
So really cool. So that worked. And I'm clicking on it now. And so I assume I'll probably get another text message maybe a little bit later or something like that following up on it, or?
He doesn't have any kind of process attached to this. I just kind of, I did it for him. It was kind of a demo that I did because him and I got on a call. And here's the interesting story of the guy that started that company.
Yeah.
For those of you that are in lead gen, you might remember a company called HomeGain, right?
Yeah, HomeGain. Yeah.
Super early. So the founder of that company is Brad Inman, who does the Inman conference.
Yes.
And this is his newest company.
Oh, okay. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, people should try that out. I mean, heck, I guess I could give my number too. That it's 503-749-9990. And if someone texts 100, they'll get a code back to get $100 off the conference. And then they'll get a couple other messages from me. And if they want to even use that text message to talk to me, that number, they can do that as well. So if they have any other questions. So that's the key. That's the cool thing, I think, about this is that not only is it great to get leads in and provide a code or, discount, or whatever it may be, but if they want to use that same number and go, hey, Mike, let's grab dinner this weekend, I'm going to get it. And I'll be like, sure. What time, and it becomes, it doesn't have to be, text,
it transitions from an inquiry to a real conversation.
Yes.
That would normally happen kind of in real life anyway, with maybe just a little bit more friction in between.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But it's, it's easy. And I could even, based on a conversation, I could put him into other campaigns. So I can move him out, maybe somebody out of this discount code campaign into another campaign just by toggling him over. Go, okay, he's interested in this, maybe exhibiting. I don't know. First of all, I don't have this built out, which I need to. But I could go, okay, he's an exhibitor, he wants that information. So I'll put him on this campaign instead of the attendee campaign. And then boom, I can have drip things going out, text, calls, all that sort of stuff. I just find it so flexible and easy to use. It's just really, really cool.
It came out, I was kind of a hacker to begin with. That's why my stories of like using data from my real estate appraiser to do WinFax things and like all of those kind of things. So when we rolled out the software, what we did is we tried to make it as flexible as possible to not be put into a box. And so you're really, me as a marketer at heart, I'm really into like, how do I make my life simple and get to conversations with people and, achieve basically goals in a way like that. I wish I could do this. And I try to make the software, us and our development team, we have 8 full-time developers. We eat and breathe this stuff of how do we make it so flexible that anybody can use it to do just about anything, as long as you're a little bit creative.
Yeah.
But then we do, a lot of stuff for you too, like the campaigns. If you think of sales, we have a bunch of pre-written campaigns where once you have that first conversation, you kind of define where that person is going to fall. We have a process we call ICON, which is you create an inquiry and there's follow-up steps to get to a conversation. So that's the C, I see. From that conversation, there's an outcome. And then based on that outcome, you got to nurture that person and to generate another inquiry to have another conversation. That's a conversation cycle. More conversation cycles you have with someone, the more trust you have, the more rapport you have, the closer they are to the buy cycle, because time is linear.
Yeah.
But that ICON acronym works really well, because what it does is it simplifies all sales processes, right? Because when I'm done talking to you, there's going to be some kind of outcome. And most of the time, there's some follow-up task. Call me in a month, call me in 6 months, call me in a year, until I'm actually ready. And we've pre-written all of those campaigns in very generic formats, confirming an appointment tomorrow, to follow up in a week, follow up in a month, to take away tasks that are in your task list of your CRM from a salesperson, make it all basically outbound, automate the outbound so you can focus 100% on the inbound, kind of like HubSpot, right? They're the inventors of inbound marketing. Well, this is like a double opt-in inbound.
Yeah. I want to ask you get off just change it real quick. And then I know you got to head out here. I've been keeping you a long time.
Yeah, no problem.
But what's your thoughts? I saw something, I think on your LinkedIn about emojis and the use of emojis. And obviously, which is cool. Again, your system, you can put emoji, you can do all kinds of GIFs. You can put GIFs in there, all kinds of stuff.
And text emoji videos too.
Yeah, you can do emoji video, all kinds of just real stuff that you would normally do on your iPhone, right? What are the use of emojis? How do you see that as a beneficial tool in some of these, type of nurturing marketing campaigns?
Right. So there's actually been studies on this that have been done. So the emoji, an emoticon, is to convey emotion, because if you look at the studies of communication, most communication is actually nonverbal cues, right? It's intonation, it's body language, it's leaning in, it's leaning out. If you're a student of sales, you learn about mirroring and all those things to get into rapport and so on and so forth. But the reality, what we have found, identical campaigns, emoji, no or no emoji, right? Something as simple as dropping a happy face in front of hi, like, hey, hi, that you are enthusiastic. It conveys enthusiasm in that what is kind of a 2D medium, right? In real communication amongst people is 4D, right? A lot of times, because 3D to 4D, depending if you're standing in front of them or over the phone or, on a video call. So the important part of it is what we've found, and what seems to be supported by studies, is that it just adds a layer of authenticity that feels really real to people. And we tend to find that there's a 25 to 30% bump in terms of engagement and responses when you use basically emojis. And we've seen the same thing even in email campaigns. If I remember correct, what's that company? There's a company that does a bunch of research, the state of email.
Yeah.
I can't remember their name right now. But anyway, they've done studies of using emojis in the subject line.
Yeah.
And that's basically helped, or in that kind of the secondary cart, the sub-subject line that you see on email, basically that kind of hidden one, the first line of the text, if you drop an emoji in.
Yeah.
Yep. So if you drop in any one of those, it just helps your message stand out. And now what we've done is we've taken that emojis, and now we're basically pushing the limits with basically GIFs, right? So what we're doing is, in some of our campaigns, we've done stuff like, let's say you add a little bit of humor. You're like, hey, I've tried to follow up with you 7 times. And then maybe there's like a picture of a guy behind his phone, like banging his head against the desk, right? It's like something funny, but it makes it human at the other end, and it elicits a response.
Yeah.
And you need a response one way or another, a yes or no, to get into conversation. Because if you don't get that far, then you have zero opportunity, right? You can only close leads that you have a conversation with.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's just like again, not to be repetitive, just it feels more organic when you have those types of things in there. It's a real person, and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, our tagline was authentic automation. So
yeah, well, I think you nailed it. And of course, it's not up to you to be authentic. To be honest with you,
right.
You're creating the tool. The message still needs to be authentic, right? It can't be. It can't be so robotic. There should be some, organic authenticity to it.
Yep.
But at least yours allows for it. What's also cool that another thing is that, like, for example, that 100 code that I'll like text me 100 or whatever. Well, I have it set up so they don't just have to text 100. They could say, hey, Mike, can you give me the 100 code? And it'll still recognize it, right? So it'll see the 100 in it, and it'll add them to that campaign. So like the score, I don't know how he has it set up, but he could set it up. So send me my score, and it'll recognize the score in there and send you the message. So it doesn't, because that becomes problematic too with systems. They're like, oh shit, if it didn't fit into that cookie cutter thing, then the whole thing breaks, right?
Right. Yeah. A lot of times, like, our people will use kind of like two words combined together.
Yeah.
Codes, because words just feels a lot more organic too.
Yeah.
And they know exactly what they're requesting.
Yeah.
Right. When they see that, like, text free score to this number, exactly what you're going to get. Because it's part of the request itself. So it reinforces the desire for what they want to accomplish. But yeah, we just see that we do we have a weighted algorithm that kind of looks for some of that stuff. And even if it's not exactly perfect, we'll basically give you the ability to still deliver the message if we have a certain level of certainty based on that weighted algorithm of what is being texted over. And we also have kind of a fallback, like, call it a 404 page that says like, hey, please text that.
What was that? Yeah, which you can create. I can create on my own too, right? That message I can customize to make sure that it's organic and
correct.
Hey, were you asking for this?
Yep.
You could do some. What was it that you were looking for?
Right.
All really cool stuff, and it's cool to chat with you about how companies are using text, and even with the ads and Facebook and Google, and how to really capture a new definition of a lead or inquiry outside of the web form, and so really cool. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, obviously they can just go to callaction.co.
Correct.
Or any other options?
Yeah, I mean, you can call or text me directly. I'm a student of my own thing, so I like to have conversations with people. So my number is 323-741-2255. So again, 323-741-2255. I am in California, so just keep that in mind if you're
no late night texts. Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll have that written up here too. And then obviously they can email you too at jesse@callaction.co as well.
Yep.
And good stuff, man. It was fun to talk with you and hear a little bit about your story and what you got going on now. And I appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. I mean, the beautiful thing is, your industry and the industry as a whole of lead generation, sales and marketing is a $750 billion a year problem, right? Yeah. And there's kind of two phases of that. I'm trying to solve one phase of it, which is like the reason why there's so much money spent on marketing is because follow-up sucks. So people got to keep buying new leads because they fail to follow up with the first one, or they don't have a scalable solution. So I think, you by coaching people on your conference, where they're going to learn best practices in terms of executing, lead gen at a really high level, and then maybe us to help them maybe not need to buy as many leads or get a better conversion because, at one point I spent time selling leads, and what I knew is people would tell me, hey, your leads suck. I was like, well, that's weird. I close them. Like,
yeah, right.
What's the common denominator here, right? So if we can get people, better at closing their deals because we improve their their follow-up processes, then everybody wins, because from a lead gen side, people will buy more leads. You'll get less churn. So you can really create kind of win-win synergy there between those two
100%. And that's the basis of our belief at Lead Generation World, is really trying to focus on the buyers and helping them not only maybe generate their own leads, but how do they close them and what they do afterwards. Because if you don't, man, your example that you just talked about, as somebody, has taken the same lead and not being able to close it and telling you your leads suck is happens on a regular basis. And maybe there are cases where the leads do suck, but the fact of the matter is, if you have a good, mature buyer or a brand that knows what to do when they get those leads and are working them properly, the industry can grow significantly. And it's not just about not having to buy more leads necessarily. It could be just, how about scaling more? How about producing more and getting bigger, beyond your little bubble that you're in now? So yeah, I mean, I'm completely in line with your thoughts too. Well, good stuff, Jesse. I appreciate it again. I look forward to seeing you again. Maybe we'll do this again, and hopefully we'll be in person. At conferences in person and all that sort of stuff. I don't know how you feel, but we'll be in Denver in January, assuming everything goes as planned. We talked about this earlier. Yep. And maybe we'll just have to see how things go. But we're certainly going to have an event in January, so maybe we'll see you there.
Yeah. If not, then I already know your fallback plan. So either one sounds pretty good to me.
Awesome. All right, buddy. I'll talk with you later.
All right. You have a great one. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.